Yeah, I'm leaning towards there is probably no God, but
Probably. Is that a it's like a probabilistic claim?
yes.
And how do you otherwise determine probability, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, yeah, we just I guess make bets or um, because
If
you
I go
can't
to
prove it,
a
right?
Well, you can demonstrate probability. That's why I asked. A lot of people use this term probable, and they're really saying they have a feeling, which is fine. You can have a feeling, but if I walked into um like a somewhere in Vegas, right, and went to the roulette table, right, I could actually establish the probability of hitting one of the numbers, right?
True.
And why is it I can establish the probability of the roulette table? What gives me access to probability in the example of the roulette table?
I mean, large amount of experiments, numbers.
Well, yeah, we have a constraint, right, of how many numbers are on the wheel, first of all. And we have access to favorable outcomes versus unfavorable outcomes. So we have access to both of those things. So if it's red 6, I don't even know if that's the right color for that number, but that we want, right? We have that, and we can actually establish that's our favorable against all the unfavorable. So we have access to both there, and that way we can do probability. But when an atheist says it's improbable that God exists, they actually don't have access to favorable outcomes, in this case, God not existing, and unfavorable scenarios where God does exist. So what happens is you're using probability colloquially, but there's no real justification to even use the term probable, unprobable. It's just a feeling. It's like, it just doesn't seem like God exists. So that's why I'm a little more rigorous with people when they use the term probable. What they really mean is it doesn't feel like it. It's like an intuition. It's not real probability. You're not being really clear and sharp with your language. And I hate to be like a language police, but I think in this case it matters.
Yeah, that's fair.
So what else would you call it if you were to put probability on the side, considering that you don't have access to favorable and unfavorable outcomes?
Probably like a collection of arguments on either side, and then you like internally weigh them and then decide.
Yeah, we could do so. So you agree that arguments could be a form of evidence?
Um, yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Well, I mean, you just said you're using arguments as evidence to determine where you land on the side, which side you land on as far as people, God existing or not. So that then it would be fair that someone who levied an argument who thought God existed, an argument would be a valid evidence brought forth, considering you're using it to negate the claim.
Yeah.
Okay, and what else would you try to use to determine God exists as far as some sort of epistemic methodology? Would you use anything else other than arguments?
I mean, if there was like physical proof, like if he opens up the sky and it's like, "What's up, guys?" You could use that. But
Okay. And
like if there's some sort of
do you believe in anything? Is there anything you believe in that you don't use physical proof for?
um, I don't know.
I mean, can you think of something you believe in and you're like, oh, there's no physical evidence for it, but I believe it anyway?
I can't think of anything offhand.
Do you believe in human rights?
Yeah,
You believe human rights exist?
yeah.
Do you have any physical evidence for human rights existing?
Well, you could say like, I can see where you're going, but I'll just say no.
Okay, so you do believe in something without physical evidence.
Sure.
Okay, so then if you do believe in something without physical evidence, how do you determine which things without physical evidence are justified in believing and which things are not? Because you do grant yourself a belief that you would call, maybe you'd call it justified, or maybe you'd bite the bullet and say it's not justified, that you believe in human rights, that they exist, but you agree that you can actually demonstrate. So a lot of your own types of thinkers, other atheists, might push back and say, well, you know what? You're right. There is no evidence for human rights. So why are we believing something with no evidence? Like, you know what I mean? So it seems like a fair question, even without the argument for God. Before we examine the arguments for God, it seems fair that we examine what we're using as a methodology to come to the conclusion that it's rational or not rational to believe in God. And it seems like most of the time it's physical evidence used against the theist or the Christian. But then when we throw it back at you when it comes to human rights, you're totally fine accepting human rights exist without any physical evidence.
Yeah, I just agreed for the sake of the argument, just to agree with you. But I wouldn't say that they exist like independent physically. I'd say they're a concept like in the brain that we use. So,
but are they justified to act like they do exist?
like, what do you mean?
Like, for instance, isn't it the case? Like, I'm asking, like, if you think rights exist as a construct in the brain, in the mind, or in the brain as a concept, and you believe that they do exist, but they're just in your brain, couldn't a Christian say, I believe God exists, he's just in my mind? And wouldn't you have to accept that just the same way you accept rights exist?
Maybe if he was like physical in your mind in some way.
Well, I mean, wouldn't rights, under your view, be physical in your mind?
Yeah.
Okay, so how else wouldn't, if God existed the same exact way rights do in the human mind, and you justify rights existing based on them being inside of a mind, how could you say God doesn't exist if he existed the same way rights do?
Yeah, good point. Maybe he does.
But then you couldn't say he doesn't exist, because you would just say, well, yeah, I mean, that's a type of existence I would agree with, that, as far as God existing. So that's where the reason I ask specifically about rights is because do you believe that I take it that you're someone who's okay with other people's having beliefs, but there's a condition. What's the condition you set on other people's beliefs?
I mean, I don't understand. I'm okay with other people having beliefs.
As long as
they don't steal my car, I guess.
oh, your car, do you own your car?
Yes.
Is that a rights argument?
I don't know.
Do you have a right to your car, like a right to property? Are you assuming that rights exist when you say my car? Or are you just saying, I currently am in possession of a machine that moves me from one point to another, but if someone comes along with a bigger gun, they're actually justified in taking it because rights don't really exist. They just exist in my brain.
Sure.
Okay. So if you believe that, do you believe someone should go to jail if they take, quote, your car?
Yeah.
Okay. So you're willing to use force to maintain your belief in rights, right?
Yes.
Okay. And so this is why I asked, most atheists say, believe whatever you want. You know, I don't care if you believe in fairy tales, just don't X, right? They just don't X. Just don't take my stuff. Just don't hurt me. Don't do this. Don't violate my rights, they say, right?
All right.
And then what if I didn't believe in rights?
Wait, say the last part again.
What if I didn't believe in rights? Because here's the statement. I don't care about what you believe. Just don't force your beliefs on me, essentially. That's what it comes down to. Well, I don't believe in rights. So when someone says, believe what you want, just don't force your beliefs on me, that's a person who believes in rights. And when someone says, I don't believe in rights, you force your belief in rights on other people. So if you're okay forcing your belief on other people who don't believe what you believe, why would it be wrong for a Christian to force their beliefs on you?
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. I don't know why you guys do that. So,
So,
all right. I'm going to give you a reason to believe in God, okay?
all right.
Okay. Do you also believe that truth has a type of existence?
Maybe.
Like, you believe it exists, because otherwise, like, why would you be talking to any of us, like, debating or coming to a conclusion about God, or not even God, anything, any proposition about the world, conclusions of science, even, like naturalistic truths or whatever. You believe that truth exists because we
Sure. Yeah.
pursue it, right? So it's like, it's something that exists, right? But you would agree that truth doesn't exist the same way an apple does?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And if there's only, would you say there's like two, at least two that we know of, types of existence, concrete and abstract?
Sure.
Okay. And would you agree that truth is on the side of abstract and not concrete? Like, you can't find truth under a rock, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So you would side with abstract, right?
Sure.
Would you agree that abstractions are associated with a mind? Definitionally?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Do you agree that if truth does exist, it's universal? It's like objective and universal.
Yes.
Okay. And if truth is universal and abstract, and you said it requires a mind, it's mind associated with mind, do you agree that humans discover truth?
Potentially.
Well, if there is a truth, and humans use their reasoning and logic and their sense data and their language to discover it, the only other way it could be is if they're creating it, which would make it sort of arbitrary and subjective. Like, if we were creating truth, that means we could just change the truth conventionally. So that's why I asked. I think it's a true dichotomy to say truth is either discovered or it's completely subjective and made up, which is a contradiction. Like, so we avoid the contradiction, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So in avoiding the contradiction of truth being subjective, we go with truth is objective. And if it's discoverable and not invented and crafted, it's discovered. Now we have two premises you agree with. One being truth is abstract, mind-dependent, and objective. And truth is discoverable.
Yeah.
Okay. If it's discoverable, if truth is discoverable and mind-dependent, it follows that it exists in a type of way before humans.
I would disagree.
Okay, but now you're contradicting one of the premises.
Well, I don't think so. It could be such that it evolved evolutionarily within the mind, and you discover it, that you have it in your mind, right?
But you said the truth is objective. If it evolves, then it's nominal and changing. That would make it subjective and changing and relative.
Well, what if it's like this static like thing that all humans with minds have, that they discover?
Yeah, but discovery, like, tell me one thing that's discovered by a human that doesn't necessarily exist before the human discovers it.
I don't know.
There's nothing. It's actually the word discover assumes and supposes a thing that exists that's discovered by a knower or a being. And so It has to exist to be discovered. There's nothing you can discover that doesn't already exist. If it's discoverable, it existed before you discovered it. And so if truth is discovered by humans, singular or plural human minds, that means it has a type of ontology that precedes the humans.
I mean, it could have coexisted as they evolved.
It could have, but even if I granted that, that means that it has a type of existence that's independent of the human minds discovering it.
No, because it could still exist just in the mind. So just in the human species mind.
No, that's, hold on a second. If you say the human species, that's plural minds. Which mind? All minds?
Of the human species.
Okay, if truth exists in all minds of the human species, why do we discover truth through methodology? That means everything that's knowable is already in the mind.
Well, the concept would exist. Not all knowable things would exist. So is this accurate, aka truth? That concept or whatever that evolutionary mechanism could exist in the mind, but not all knowable things.
Well, the truth as a concept needs to be taught to people, right?
Maybe.
Well, I mean, when you're a baby and you start learning like language and you start pooping your diaper and you point at things and you get the sounds right, are you saying that a baby, 1 week old baby from this view already has the concept, the abstract concept truth?
I don't know when it gets installed or learned or.
Well, if your statement was true and all human beings as a species inhabit what they have in their brain, encased in their mind, in their brain, is the truth as a concept, and somehow it just sort of percolates out over time. The problem with that view is that humans are particulars. Each human is particular. So what you're saying is there's universality in a plural set of humans. And you're saying the universality of truth as a concept somehow exists in human minds. They're identical. But if you said that it exists in a human mind or a location in the brain, what you're saying is that there's something that's material inside human brains that's identical to all other material in all other human brains if it's universal. Now, you agreed with premise one that truth is universal. You can't have these two statements next to each other. Truth is universal, and truth is found in each particular brain. Let's call it a brain from your view. That's like saying like there's universality of truth, but it's not discovered. It's actually found in particular brains, and somehow there's a universal of particular brains. You can't get the universality of truth if it's autonomous from a bunch of unrelated particular brains. They're totally unrelated, by the way. They don't even know each other exist. You have to learn other humans exist. You have to learn propositions from other humans. You have to learn the names of the objects of the external world. You discover the truth, even in a propositional sense. You discover it. That's why I'm trying to pin you on the discoverability of truth from your view, because if it's discoverable and not a bottom-up autonomous fake Lego set that could be completely wrong, if it is in fact discoverable, that means it has a type of existence that comes before the human mind. Now, this is true even before we're born. Didn't the truth exist before you were born?
I mean, conceptually, yeah. But.
Yeah, right. But if conceptually the truth exists before you were born, didn't conceptually it exist before the human before you was born?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like we would agree on it now, but like if there's no one there to witness it, right? Like.
Well, now you're denying the past, right? You believe in evolution?
Yeah.
So if you believe in evolution, you believe in a distant past that precedes human minds, and there's a truth of the matter of a past that exists, right?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So now you have a truth that exists, and you argued that truth, you accepted that truth is conceptual, but the truth exists before all human minds.
Okay.
The truth
I just think
exists.
truth is like accuracy. So
Wait, accuracy?
yeah, it's just
You, you
a
mean you
concept.
mean
So it's
ac-
like truth wasn't like hanging out somewhere before human minds. It's just this.
so there wasn't a truth of the past then.
We would say that now in communicating the concept and understanding the past, right? But there wasn't
Uh-huh.
like this haze of truth out there somewhere.
So the truth wasn't discovered. The truth was invented by humans.
Could have evolved. Could be emergent property of the brain.
Well, no, emergentism debunks that view. Emergent property would assume a novel, particular phenomenon from a set of particulars or a set of variables that produce some effect. But if you were to say the truth, if the truth is universal, emergentism would argue against that being the case, because the truth would be a particular epiphenomenal effect of a brain, a particular brain. That you don't have access to universal truth from an emergent system, because each brain is a different system. They're unrelated. So you can't say your brain percolated truth and it's universal, and so did mine, coincidentally. Two different systems, unrelated.
Well, yeah, but we both came from like, the same distant relative, right? So that same software, hardware is similar, right?
But isn't there even a truth of the matter, even without propositions and evaluations? Isn't there a cause and effect truth to a previous animal, even like a dog, an ancient dog that precedes human beings? Let's like posit a deep past, and there's animals and no humans. There's a truth of the matter of how the world operates, regardless if someone uses language and categories to describe the truth of the matter. In fact, I would argue the fact that we can describe anything about the external world assumes that the external world has existed in a way that we can even describe it. So there's a truth of the matter, a state of affairs about the world in the past that precedes your ability to develop language about it. Otherwise, you're arguing from a sort of like, you hear this from like, I don't know if they're like postmodernist or whatever. What you hear from them is, no, we're just inventing the truth as we speak it. Like the tree actually didn't exist until I named it, right? They say that. Well, you don't agree with that, right?
No.
So trees existed, and they weren't water. They were trees before any human minds described the trees, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so there was a truth of the matter that had a type of existence. We both agree that truth is abstract from your view and conceptual. But the problem you have is, if truth is abstract and it has a type of existence that precedes human minds, you have to now tell me in what way the truth exists, being that there's no human minds around. You already agreed that a truth exists in a type of way before all human minds describe it. In what way does the truth exist if it's mind associated to a mind, but there's no minds around, no human minds around? What way does it exist? It's not concrete. So now you have to, you do special pleading, and you have to say, well, the truth is conceptual now that there's humans, but there was a truth of the past without humans, but that exists in a different way. You know what I mean? So what I'm pointing, you see what I'm getting at is like, if you agree with the premises that truth is abstract, conceptual, and universal, and it precedes all human minds, and you agreed that concepts are mind dependent, you've necessitated a type of mind that precedes all human minds. There's really not a way out of this. I've trapped so many people on this. The only way, and it's not a valid way, the only way out of this is to do special pleading and to say that concepts also could exist without a mind. There's a concept with a mind and there's a concept without a mind. So you have to have two types of ontological concepts, similar to the Mormons, how they talk about matter. There's regular matter and then there's spirit matter.
Yeah, I don't know. I just don't. I mean, I've heard this argument many times. I just don't find the variations of the tag.
Well, I mean, what you find compelling, if you are trapped in the entailment of the argument, and your cop out is, I just don't think it's compelling or whatever. I'm not even trying to get you to believe in God, but I'm trying to trap you in an entailment of your own accepted premises. And you've accepted the premises, right?
So how do we connect the premises to this other mind?
Okay. Premise 1, truth is universal and conceptual. Yes?
Yes.
Concepts require a mind.
Yes.
The truth existed before human minds.
Disagree.
So, okay, now you're going to go back. You're going to change now, right? So if the truth didn't exist before human minds, then the only other option you have is to say truth is created by human minds.
Yeah, it could be a function of the human mind.
Well, no, then it wouldn't be universal. Then now you have to choose a human mind that has the true universal truth. Like, for instance, let's do it a different way, because truth is very abstract, a little more abstract than the laws of thought. Do you agree that the laws of thought have a type of existence? Law of identity, non-contradiction, excluded middle.
Sure.
Okay, would you agree the laws of thought are conceptual?
Yep.
Okay, and so would you agree the laws of thought are universal?
Sure.
Okay, so if they're universal, you can't say the laws of thought are conceptual, but they're only sourced from one human mind. That would make them particular. So if they're particular, you have to choose a special human mind that encases these laws of thought, and we all somehow implant it in our brains physically. But you don't accept that, right? That's absurd, right? That would mean that the laws of thought are particular. They're special to one mind. My mind. Let's say it's my mind. I'm the one who's the source of the laws of logic.
Yeah, but our minds could be built in the same way, right? Seeing as we're humans, right?
Built assumes, well, yeah. Well, now you're getting closer to theism. Tell me one thing that's built without intent.
Okay, well, maybe built's a bad word.
It is. Bad word in atheism.
Replicant.
So, a replicant. So it's constructed, something that's immaterial, universal, and conceptual is built by physical things. Is that what I'm hearing from you?
What's immaterial?
The truth. You said it's conceptual. That's definitionally abstract and not concrete. The brain is concrete. And so you're saying the brain fabricates, like builds, fabricates the truth. But now you're saying a physical thing, a mechanism called the brain, which is biological, hardwired, material, neurological, and it produces from physical processes universal concepts, universal immaterial things.
Yeah, I wouldn't say they're immaterial, but
okay, so the truth is material now.
Yeah, it'd be a concept in your brain.
Okay, a concept is material now, right?
Yep.
Okay, so the truth is universal and material, right?
Sure.
Okay. If the truth is universal and material, can you tell me where it's located, being that material has a Cartesian coordinate system to it?
In the brain.
In whose brain?
The brains of the people holding the concept truth.
Can you find where the truth exists in a brain and where it doesn't exist in a brain?
That's a good point. And it's kind of like finding MS Paint in Windows or like the calculator program in Windows.
Well, that proves my point that you can't find that, because what Windows is, the hardware and the software, is a representation of meaning and concepts. They're not identical to the hardware and the software. They're relayed, right? Which means that communication exists. That means there's a coder, an encoder, and a decoder. But from your view, if you say truth is material and it's produced by a material brain, and I ask you where it exists, right? And you use the computer analogy. The computer analogy actually is in favor of my position, not yours, because computers, there's nowhere in the hardware where you can find the concept itself that the hardware and the software is relaying to minds. Now, back to where the truth is. Now you're saying concepts are material. That means there's no distinction between abstract and concrete, right? You've collapsed abstract and concrete.
Yeah, I could see how you'd say that.
So if you collapse abstract and concrete and they're distinctions without a meaning, right? Everything's concrete now from your view. And now if everything's concrete, the laws of logic, the law of identity needs to be concrete. So here's where this is the end of the road, and I'll show you how. If you say the law of identity is concrete and it's found encased in human brains, and I ask you, do you believe we evolved? You say yes. Do you believe because if evolution was true, there was a type of creature that preceded us that didn't have our brain, because under your view, the brain itself evolved, right? You agree that from your view, the brain evolved?
Yeah.
So tell me how it is the case that there's a process that precedes human brains that doesn't abide by the law of identity.
How do you mean?
I mean, if there's a process that produces a brain, but you're saying the law of identity exists and is sourced in brains, you can't have a process called evolution that precedes human brains, that produces human brains, because a process assumes identity. It can't contradict. Things can't contradict. There needs to be like a glob. Yeah. Right?
Yeah, it could just be a descriptor of reality as we see it.
Well, no, that is begging the question. You can't describe reality without first assuming identities. It's actually the identities you're assuming in which you're able to describe particulars or universals. So to say, no, the law of identity is just a descriptor for reality. No, you don't have access to reality or descriptions without first assuming reality has components that we can name. Not only that, but you have an assumption of the past, that the past operated a certain way. For evolution to be true, you need the transfer of information at the cellular level. You need some sort of globular process from one thing to another. Before any minds develop, before the complexity of your stomach and your liver and your brain develop, there has to be a process that abides by not only the laws of physics, but the laws of logic. They're not describing anything, but they are in fact permanent identities. There are rocks, there are trees, there is wind, there is fire, there is chemical reactions. You cannot have evolution without evolution abiding by the law of identity. You can't have it. It just doesn't, there's no process that's available to you that could be possible if it didn't abide by those laws. So now you're stuck because, you tried to ground truth in material in a brain, and then I moved it over to the laws of logic. And the fact that you're holding a position that says the brain produces the laws of logic, you've just made the history that you need for evolution to be true. You've just negated the history, because that requires the law of identity.
How did I negate it?
How did you negate the law of identity?
Yeah, if it's just a description.
No, I told you it's not just a description, because is the description of the law of identity identical to what's being described? Are descriptions identical to reference?
Oh.
No, right? So that means it's not just a description. For anything to be described, it has to have a type of existence before you describe it. You can't describe things into existence. That's nonsensical. So if the law of identity is describable, that means it existed before you could describe it. Otherwise, you can't describe anything. So
yeah.
Okay. So
you're describing the regularity of nature.
The regularity of nature assumes that the particulars in nature that behave a certain way, rocks, water, trees, wind, whatever it is, you're assuming that these things have and maintain their own identity over time. You couldn't have a regularity of nature without the regularity of the identity of things, even before we name them. You agree that under your view, there's a thing that we now call a planet, but did exist as its own identity, even without the name planet, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's the law of identity. That means that the law of identity has a type of ontological status that's not identical to material, that precedes all human minds, and you agreed that it's universal. So if you agree that the law of identity still maintains in a far distant past before human beings came on the scene from your view, and you now have to tell me from your view what the status, like what type of existence does the law of identity have in a past where there's no human minds?
Yeah, it'd just be a description of how the past functioned, or the regularity of the past, or the nature of
No, this is before descriptions. What's the status? Like, for instance, if I asked you, what's the type of existence a planet has before we described a planet?
Yeah, I must not be understanding or something. I don't know.
It would be material, right? That would be the type of way a planet exists, in material, right?
In material, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's concreteness. So if there's a past where a planet exists as material before we name it and develop categories and stuff, and a tree exists in a material way, and all of these elements and the behavior of these elements all exist in a material way. If the law of identity also coexists with that material, what way does it exist?
Yeah, I would say it doesn't exist.
It doesn't. So this is why I said you deny the law of identity in the past. So you can't have you're in a contradiction. The distant past operates a certain way where objects maintain their identity, even before we call them things. And then you're saying, well, no, the law of identity doesn't exist in the past. You can't refer to a past anymore. You don't have a history. You don't have a process that you can appeal to in the past that does a thing. In your view, we're talking about evolution. You don't have a past. You don't have access to a past to say a process.
You can still talk about it now.
Yeah, you invented it, though. You don't have any access. You're denying the thing you're talking about theoretically in your head can't actually exist, because the thing you're talking about is a process in the past where there were trees and those things had identities before we called them names. They didn't morph, for instance. A tree didn't suddenly turn into a leopard, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So you're saying the identity of objects and things maintained in a past that we don't have access to. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Okay. You can't say in P, in the past when we didn't exist, the identity of things maintained, and also in say not P and say the law of identity didn't exist in the past. You can't do both of those. You have to choose.
Well, the law of identity could have not existed in the past, and we could still say that in the past, right, that they existed, because you couldn't. It's not like you're saying that just because it doesn't exist, you can't use it, right? You can't reference the past with it now that it does exist.
Well, once you describe a past that you're assuming happened, for instance, let's take something more literal. You believe that that a long time ago, single cell, self-replicating organisms somehow breached over into multicellular development, right?
Yeah.
Does single cell Is that an identity that existed before we described it?
Yeah.
Okay. Is single cell identical to multicellular?
No.
Multicellular has its own identity?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you assume a past, the moment you start describing single cell to multicellular, you're appealing to a past where the law of identity maintains. Right? Yes-um? No-some?
Sure. I don't know. Sure.
Sure, yeah, of course. I mean, you can't describe the thing that you're describing in the past without the law of identity maintaining. How could there be such a thing in the past called a single cell that could leap into multicellular if you don't have if you don't assume that there's actually a distinction between the two that existed over time? Now that's the problem. That's the problem you have. The law of identity has to have a type of existence for your account of the past to happen. You can't say single cell, before all humans existed, there was these chemical reactions and single cell jumped to multicell somehow through a process. You can't say that and also say the law of identity didn't apply then, didn't exist. There's no law of identity. So that's why this argument, whether you find it compelling, is irrelevant to the trap that you're in. The trap that you're in is that law of identity has a type of status that you agree is abstract and conceptual and mind dependent. Now, you say yes. But then when I prove to you that the law of identity had to have some type of ontological status for evolution to be true, even in the past, even if I granted it, in a deep, distant past that you have no access to, you're saying the law of identity can shift then. It could be abstract now and mind dependent, but also not mind dependent back then. It could be a different way. Doesn't make sense. It's a contradiction. So you're in a contradiction.
I would disagree.
You disagree that you're in a contradiction.
Yeah.
Okay. And so if I said P, law of identity is abstract and mind dependent, and law of identity didn't exist back when a single cell organism leaped to a multicell organism. Those are the two statements, right?
Yeah.
That's the statement? Okay. So here's your contradiction. Single cell organisms in a distant past that we didn't observe jumped to multicellular organisms. Not P. Single cell organisms didn't have an identity, and neither did multicellular organisms. Didn't exist. So tell me how a single cell organism can change to a multicellular organism without there being a distinction between the two that follow the law of identity.
Yeah, I don't know. I think they're great descriptors of reality as we see it. So
Yeah, dude, I already I told you that descriptors, a description is a reference, right? Type of reference. Right?
yep.
Give me any object in the world that we describe. Anything. Just name one thing we describe in the world.
Cat.
A cat. Isn't it the case that to describe a cat, the referent cat needs to exist in order for us to describe it post hoc?
Yep.
Okay. So when you say the law of identity is a descriptor, whatever you're describing must have a type of existence already. Yes? Yeah?
Okay. Yeah. Sure.
Okay, cool. So the law of identity has a type of existence if you're going to say we describe it. Yeah? Yes'm?
Hello?
Yeah. Yeah. So it just proves my point. The law of identity from your deep time creation story of evolution requires the law of identity to have a type of existence in the past. So for nature to operate a certain way, it has to abide by the law of identity. And if the law of identity had a type of existence in the past, and you agree that it's today, you agree that it's conceptual, then you've necessitated a type of mind existence in the past. Otherwise, you got to tell me in what concrete way does the law of identity exist, and you can't. So,
All right.
that's it. That's it. I guess something to think about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are there any other counters? I just want to do a quick shill. We have 40 minutes, folks. I know things slowed down with a little Discord here, but if you appreciate the show, we're at 36 of 50. I appreciate a rigorous, very expressive, joyful contribution. A couple 5 minutes, 10 minutes here. Is there anyone else who's counter though on currently here in the Discord while you're here? No. Okay.
And isn't there also like the impossibility of the contrary?
You mean the tag argument?
Yeah.
Yeah, the tag argument. Sure. That's a good argument.
How do we get to the impossibility of the contrary?
Disjunctive syllogism?
Yeah, but like how do we like determine the impossibility of the contrary?
How do we determine it? I just told you a disjunctive syllogism posits basically presents a syllogism, an argument that that there's no other view that can do the thing that the argument is doing. So it forces the opposition I could use it. Let's say I'd do a different one, not God's existence, but like let's say we're coming to a debate, and I said, "Can you present an argument for why we ought to debate? Like why are we debating? So what justifies debating? Let's say there was a debate, and the debate was a meta debate about the justification for debating, the fact that we can debate at all. That would force both sides to present a case for giving an account from each of their worldviews. How is it even the case that we can debate? What's required to debate? What are all of the elements and the preconditions for debating itself, and whose worldview can account for all the necessary components of debating? Whose worldview can present an account and a justification for all that's required to debate? You might as well swap knowledge for debate or truth with knowledge. There's a number of things you can swap out in the tag argument. They all render the same result. The one who's countering Christianity specifically can't give an account for debating, and yet here they are debating.
I see. Okay. Would you say it's like better to have the ability to like give an account for everything?
Better? If you describe better as if you're describing better, what you mean by better is that you're being coherent and you're being thorough in your worldview. Sure.
Okay. Well, I guess I should. Does it get us any closer to the truth, like having an account?
Well, I kind of take even a bigger step to that. That giving an account, it establishes the source of all truth. as opposed to gets you closer to the truth. And this is something that's kind of like misunderstood in the argument itself, is that the argument is something has to be the grounding and the justification for all other things that we utilize. And from your view, and a lot of atheists and a lot of classical foundationalist theists and Christians who argue, like William Lane Craig's, they think the truth is the product of an argument, that they're going to get to the truth, as opposed to argue for the ultimacy of the starting point for all truth, for everything, for all reality, fundamental reality itself. It's like one person reads left to right and tries to get to the truth at the end of the argument book, and the other is asking, how did we even get the book? So if it's the case that the argument, which is multi-leveled, says X is the necessary precondition for Y, and let's say the truth is at the end of the book, the tag argument is asking for a justification for the book itself. We're not asking for you, we're not granting you the book called argumentation so that you can get closer to truth at the end of the book. We're not granting you all of that. We're asking a different question. How did you even get the book to begin with? You're like, no, can't I grant myself mind, evaluation, propositions, math, meaning, logic, truth, knowledge? Grant me a transcendental, immaterial folder that my worldview can't account for. Please grant me all of that, and then I'll argue whether God is a reasonable conclusion from a syllogism or anything else. It's just a fundamentally different approach. That's the difference between a foundationalist view. All of the Christians who argue classical foundationalism are doing a disservice, because they're arguing within basically an atheistic paradigm. They're just granting the opponent everything, and the tag isn't granting anything at all. It grants nothing. And so that's ultimately, like, just to use a type of analogy, is that you're asking a question, Forte, about the necessary preconditions for truth and knowledge. And so if the atheist agrees that there are a set of preconditions necessary for truth and knowledge, it's fair for the theist, or the Christian in this case, me, to ask you, okay, cool, if you agree that there are a set of preconditions for knowledge being possible that you have to assume, can your worldview justify the existence of those things? Can it make sense of them? Can it give an account of it? That's the question.
Yeah. And I would say I don't know. But yeah.
You don't know. Now, would it be better of a view if a view could give an account? Let's say it wasn't even fully exhaustive, but if a view could give an account for the preconditions of knowledge, is that a better view than one that can't?
No.
Okay. So you can just grant yourself whatever axioms, and then they're self-evident, right? For you?
I would just say, like, just because you have a basket of explanations doesn't put you in a better, like, I could say Steve is the reason for everything. Doesn't get me any closer to the truth. Doesn't make it any better.
Well, no. We can run with that. We can run with Steve. Is Steve a created being?
No, he's not.
Okay. And Steve's eternally uncreated?
Yeah.
Is it necessary that Steve is eternally uncreated for him to be the justification for all truth?
Yep.
Would that make Steve God?
Sure.
Okay, so you believe in God.
Yeah, I'm just trying to show
You're trying to show that the only valid counter to the tag argument is to present a different God.
No, I'm just trying to show that having more explanatory power doesn't get you closer to truth. Well, you're saying is you're trying to find the source of everything, but
wait a second. Did you just say gaining more explanatory power doesn't get you to truth, closer to truth?
Yeah, if I can explain more with Steve, right, that doesn't get me closer to truth than someone who can't explain it.
Well, when you say closer to truth, in this case, we're not talking about propositional descriptions of reality, like why it rains in one place and not the other or something. We're talking about the justification for the preconditions for being able to access truth. So this is a thing. This is why I use the book analogy, where you think I'm asking, well, which pages should I read to get closer to the truth? I'm not asking that. I'm asking, can your worldview account for the book itself?
Yeah.
And so when you say Steve accounts for the book, well, the book in this case is fundamental reality, how reality operates, invisible things, visible things, the laws of nature, how induction being possible, the fact that we have unique minds that operate and are able to evaluate and make propositions and evaluate them and debate and do philosophy and metaphysics and all this stuff. Which world, it's totally fair to say which worldview accounts for this phenomenon. Now, I agree with you. Just saying anything is, I think, what you're saying. Just saying anything isn't necessarily a better position than saying nothing. I agree with you, but that's not what's really the case. If there is a sufficient and full justification for the preconditions of knowledge, right? Is that better than a view that can't produce anything?
I mean, it might provide more comfort to an individual. It might make more sense, right? But yeah, I'd say it wouldn't get you closer to truth, just because it is more comprehensive in explaining things. God in its very nature is going to be that way, right? It can do anything, it can be anywhere, it has all the powers of everything all the time. That's going to be the most explanatory thing ever conceived. So yeah, it's always going to win. In that sense. But it's not.
Well, God is always going to win because there's nothing else that could be the starting point for everything else that could be further explained. So it's the same misstep that you've done here, is that I don't know how else I can explain it better than the book idea, which is you're just back to truth is. Well, you're saying truth is the last chapter of a book, right? Forte, you're saying truth is the last chapter of the book, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, I'm asking a different question. I'm not asking if someone posits God is the account for the book existing in the first place. That's not the same question. That's not the same question as can the
law doesn't exist.
What's that? You understand that the question is, how is it we have the book? And you're saying, well,
the
sorry.
condition the law describes. The law tries to describe.
I can't really hear.
Was that you talking? I don't know.
No, it's Dirk Jensen.
The conditions are not a problem.
You're muffly, dude.
Yeah, you're really muffled, Dirk. You need to fix your mic.
Am I on? I was talking to myself.
Yes.
Sorry.
You're just talking to yourself.
Yeah, just mute.
Yeah, mute. Just to not go into circles for a day, and it's been a really good back and forth, by the way. So thank you. Is that?
Yeah.
I'm asking, like, there's a book on the table. Let's say the book is all of fundamental reality: space, time, matter, truth, conceptions, mind, everything I can list, everything, the whole entirety, the whole basket. That's the book. And you're saying, well, if we could just get to the end of the book, maybe we'll get closer to truth. But I'm saying what I'm asking is, can you provide an account for the fact that the truth is even exists in order that we can apprehend it? You're saying, well, we got to get closer to truth. I'm saying, no, I'm asking for a different account. I'm asking for an account from your worldview. How is it the case that there's even something called truth that we can get closer to? You're saying which view gets us closer to truth. I'm asking for which view accounts for truth existing so we can get to it.
So I'm saying I don't have one. I think what you're asking for is a style of a question that only God fits. So you're asking, well, specifically and exactly for God in the question. So I'm saying I don't know. I'm saying I don't know what caused everything. I don't know what created everything, allowed everything to exist, right? And you're saying, well, what did? You know what I mean? So
Yeah, if you say you don't know, that's fine, but you're agnostic. But if it's the case that the debate would be about what justifies that truth exists, right? That kind of debate, you'd agree, would get into, well, what's the ontology of truth, right?
Yeah.
Okay. What I'm saying is deeper than whether or not you can just account for the existence of truth. I think what I've demonstrated fairly effectively, taps my shoulder, asks for super chats, is that when I even ask from your view what the status of truth is, your view can't even tell me that. And I wasn't even asking for the justification for the existence of truth. I actually granted you that truth exists. And I simply asked you, in what way, shape, or form does it exist? And I would say that your view and the atheist view, they can't even tell me in the way in which truth exists, but yet they believe in it. The same way I asked you, how do rights exist? And you believe in them. I asked, if I asked you, where is knowledge located? You probably say a brain, but you couldn't tell me, what it's made of. What's knowledge made of? So there's all these things that you appeal to in your view, even in your argument. Let's say your counter to theism or Christianity. What I'm saying is that all of the things you grant yourself in order to argue, your own view can't account for those things, but you give them to yourself. You give yourself logic. You give yourself reasoning. You give yourself argumentation, meaning, language, math. You assume all of these things because you've just been granted them. Like, people just grant you them. They're like, yeah, but how could we argue if we don't first assume all of the needed components to argue, like a mouth and words and minds? And the Christian, in this case, me, what we're asking is, well, wait a second. Why should I grant you, Forte, all of the things you're using from your view? Why isn't it fair to ask you from your view, hey, Forte, you're using all of these immaterial things that you can't pick up and weigh and empirically verify. Could you tell me from your view how you account for those things? Isn't that a fair question?
Yeah, that's a fair question.
And so if you just said you don't know, it doesn't prove God exists. I'm not saying that. But if you just say you don't know, in any debate that asks you, like, well, can you justify those things, right? Now, this is where tag gets interesting, is that if it's the case that you can just assume things without giving a justification for their type of existence, isn't it the case? Wouldn't it be fair for me to just assume God exists and use the same defense?
Can you repeat the last part?
If it's the case that you grant yourself a type of existence of things you can't justify empirically, right? If I asked you, how do you justify, and you say, I just don't know. If you grant yourself that route, you don't have to justify all of these things, right? In your epistemic system, you don't have to. You just grant them yourself. You grant them to yourself. If you grant them to yourself, why isn't it I can't grant myself that God exists if I don't also need to justify?
Well, I guess, would we see God in the same way you see logic? Do we see?
You don't see logic.
I mean, we can observe us using it in conversation.
No, you don't observe logic. You observe events that abide by logic, but you don't observe logic. So if I said,
okay,
even information, let's take something a little less abstract, still abstract, but little less. You think information exists, right?
Yeah.
Okay. In what type of way does information exist? Does information exist like an apple exists physically?
Sure.
It does? Can you tell me where you've ever held information?
Yeah, code.
Code? No, code is not information. Code is not physical information. Code is representative information. So if you don't hold code and whatever, because you could make two lines of code that all have the same characters and say different things, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that can't be it. So you're not physically holding information, being that in one hand I could hold the same line of code as another, and they both mean different things. The information is what they mean. So information's another one. If I said, well, justify what type, from your view, you agree that information exists. I think God exists. And then you go, can you show me God? And I go, no, it's a different category. Like, I can't show you because it's not an empirical or material claim. And I ask you back, can you show me information? You believe in a number of things. This is how the conversation started. You believe in a whole slew of things that aren't empirically weighed or verified through any sense data. You believe in that they exist. And we go, that's fair. Like, we just kind of got to a place where it seems nonsensical to pretend they don't exist because we just all assume that they exist. But when the Christian like myself says, oh, that's interesting, I also think information exists, and I ask you, in what way does it exist? You can't tell me it exists concretely, otherwise you could give me an example. And I would say information does exist. I agree with you. But I would hold a view that's more rational than yours, in that I would say information is mind dependent, and information has a type of existence that isn't identical to material. Like, the information of what an apple isn't actually found in the apple. I don't cut an apple open and it tells me it's an apple. So that's what's frustrating about it, is that when we get into these conversations and precept comes up, what ends up happening every time, almost every time there's not a spur gout and they complete the conversation, what happens is the atheist grants themselves free access to a whole slew of immaterial transcendental things that don't exist materially. And we ask them to justify those things, and you say, I just assume them. And then we go, cool, I just assume God. And then what happens is you, the atheist, forfeit your ability to cross-examine the Christian who says God exists, because you believe in a whole slew of things without any justification. So why can't we?
Am I lagging?
I didn't hear you. Who talked?
I said Dirk is dumb.
Dirk is a silly pants. We have 8 more to go, y'all. Let's hit the goal. 17 minutes. Let's celebrate a useful conversation.
There was a thing that you brought up earlier that I wanted to mention, is when you were talking about the necessary being. It's also, how do you have knowledge except being through what means? How do you interact with it? Can he does he interact with the world? Through what means do you know him?
Mm-hmm. Oh, like John, you're saying, with Steve, you mean?
Yeah, when you brought up Steve, it's like,
right.
Okay, through what means do you have knowledge of this necessary being?
Right. That actually works in our favor. A lot of Christians, someone will be like, Slunky the elephant, and then they scoff and they say like, oh, okay, we're not serious. I recommend for Christians listening who run these arguments, and then the atheist uses like some Spanky the elephant like Peterson does or whatever, you actually take them dead serious.
3 years just around the corner.
Just like John did.
Thanks
you
again
just
for the great content over the years.
Thank you so much, Sean. I really appreciate all your support over the years. Very generous of you. Most of the time, thank you so much, Sean. Wow, 35 months. That's awesome. Yeah, that's a great point, John. It's like we should just be like, cool, let's get into it. Like, don't scoff at them when they say Spanky the elephant. Give them Spanky the elephant and do exactly what John just said. So how do we know Spanky the elephant?
Because if they choose to adopt our system without calling it our system, then they just conceded our system.
Yeah, and Forte kind of did that and kind of giggled about it, that I granted him Steve and asked him all the necessary aspects about Steve for him to be the source sole, uncreated, eternal creator of all things, and essentially he believes in God. He just believes Steve is God and not Christ. So that to me that's closer. That's better like than moving closer to atheism. Even Steve is a better step than not Steve in that case.
I just did that for like to show the explanatory power, right? Like you can't beat that as far as explanatory power goes, right? And so to say that you have the largest quantity of explanatory power.
But it's not about explanatory power, though. It's about having a coherent, consistent worldview that can account for everything, not just explanatory power.
That's pretty similar, right? Like if I say God is the reason for everything, right?
Well, no. We're saying can account for everything. It's not just having more explanatory power. It's literally having an account for everything.
Yeah, I'm saying that's not.
No, because more is arbitrary in your system B. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I was trying to use a book analogy for this. Is that something that I wish I had a different way of getting this through? Is that what John's saying? What I've been saying is that explanatory power is post all the preconditions we're talking about. Like so explanatory power, the way you're referencing it is like it's the end of the argument. It's the end of your conclusions and your investigation. We're asking a different question: is justification for a reality that even allows for explanatory power? It's a much different question than explanatory power. Where it's a meta question about the fact that we live in an existence that even can be explained, that's intelligible. We're asking for the difference between an account for and what you're saying is explanatory power, which is down the road after we do stuff, which is John just told you that you have an arbitrary standard for better or more. It has more explanatory power. We're asking a fundamentally different question. What accounts for a world that you have explanatory power? What accounts for it? Yeah. Thank you so much, Abby Zhang. Very generous donation. W's in the chat for Abby. Thank you so much. Another $10. When is your boxing match with Alex O'Connor? That's funny. 6 more to go. 12 minutes. 6 more to go, y'all. Let's hit that goal, please. Do you want to add anything to that, John or Forte? You were about to say something.
I work 80-hour weeks, so okay. I'm barely here.
Okay. Yeah. Do you want to give me back, Forte? Try to steel man the distinction we were trying to make.
Yeah, you're just trying to say what's the justification for everything.
Essentially, in big terms, but specifically, what's the justification for all of the preconditions for anything to be explainable, like anything after the fact, like And you're saying, well, let me just explain. Let me try to use explanation to get to a justification. But that's reversed. We're asking for what's the justification for explanation, and you're saying, well, if you just grant me explanation, I'll get you a justification.
Yeah, but you're specifically asking for God in the question.
Well, I'm asking for. No. Like you can try to. This is why it's a true disjunctive syllogism. Is like you can try to insert anything you want. I'm not constraining you to God. I'm not going to ask you anything. You can insert anything. But what we'll find is whatever thing you insert, for the most part, in my experience, is going to be a created thing, which gets you into a broken view pretty quickly with a couple of follow-up questions. Anything you try to insert that's created is already disqualified, because if something's created, there are a set of preconditions for it to be created. There had to be a set of a set of circumstances and like a way in which things operated for something to be created. That means it starts the endless regress train. And so if you jumped on that train and inserted some people say a water bottle, like, oh, cool, tell us about the water bottle. How did you come to know that how is it the case that the water bottle accounts for, let's say, the conceptual realm, metaphysics and the laws of thought? Well, what do we know about water bottles? Water bottles are made. We could actually track water bottles back to a specific time in human history. We can track an inventor, and using your own empirical standard, you debunk yourself by showcasing that a bottle actually has some sort of provenance in history. We can track back to a beginning. Anything that's created, that's put in place of God. So you're close in saying, well, God is the only thing that'll actually make sense in this question. I agree with you. That God is the only thing you could insert that makes sense of this answer. God is, and it's not special pleading either, because it would be necessarily a completely different thing, not in the category of created things. So you actually know this.
The contrary is impossible.
That's why it's like interesting, Forte. You actually philosophically know the problem that you're in, and you know that you can't appeal to anything created, and you know that the answer has to be at God level, which really there's only one other question, Forte, from that position, is like, who is God? Which is a fair question.
Well, I mean, like Noah just said, the impossibility of anything else, right? But what you're saying is that every conceivable other thing is impossible, which I don't know how you could ever determine that to be the case.
Because you don't have to boil down every single worldview when there are realistically a handful of worldviews because of their epistemology.
Yeah,
it's either from God, it's not from God, or, this is why it's the impossibility of the contrary.
Yeah, you could do, Forte, the same argument I kind of flirted with in that exchange, is that there's only two options for epistemology. And if you can present a third one, I'm happy to hear it, and my audience will be happy to hear it. Truth and knowledge is either constructed from the bottom up by humans, which makes it arbitrary, changing, subjective, or it's discovered top down. We would call that theonomous. And there's no third option. Now, if you defeat me and say there's a third option, I'm all ears. There isn't a third option, though.
Yeah, I don't know the third option.
Well, I
I'd have
mean,
to think about it.
Yeah, you can think about it. That's fine. It's just it's an impossible third option because, if it's any other option is almost certainly going to be another form of autonomy. It's just going to be another set of particulars building tiny blocks like Legos up in the sky and hoping that they were right about the foundation that they built everything on. And then when the tower collapses, they rebuild it and say, well, our assumptions were wrong. Let's build it up, bottom up again. Now, what's interesting about this is that science itself, often from your view, I don't know about you, Forte, but often is seen as like the pinnacle of knowledge. And from our theistic, our Christian, specifically our Orthodox Christian perspective, science is like one of the lower forms of knowledge because of the variable problem, because of all of the things assumed before you even do science, right? This is like low form. You can change the propositions change, the resolution changes. And that's why we say that even if you appeal to science, I don't reject science. Like, that's a useful tool when it's done properly. But the reality is that's itself a discovery process. That means the truth that does exist propositionally about science, about, natural causes and stuff, even that's discoverable. That's something you discover. So it has a type of existence anyway that's independent of human minds.